Welcome to FounderLine, the show where we answer your questions about startups. I'm your host, Joe Beninato. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you all with us. FounderLine's all about helping people with their startups. So you could be someone who's thinking about starting a company and you want to get some advice about how to do that. You might be a founder who's already started a company and you're encountering a situation in your startup right now. Or you might be an employee who's thinking about joining a startup and you want to find out more about life inside a startup before you actually decide to sign on the dotted line. If you have a question, we want to try and help you today. And this is a live show, so you have the opportunity to reach us right now. You can either send us an email to help@founderline.com, or you can try and reach us on Twitter as well. Our Twitter handle is @FounderLine. With that, let's get started. Our guest today is Hiten Shah, who's a serial entrepreneur, advisor, and investor who's done a bunch of companies, including Crazy Egg, Kissmetrics, and QuickSprout, which is his latest company. He's also amazingly generous with his time. He talks to startup founders all the time, helping them out, giving them advice, and that's why I thought it'd be great to have him on the show today. So Hiten, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here. First time to help people on TV.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we're blasting out across the internet right now.
Awesome. We'll
be on cable later tomorrow night, or maybe tonight. So yeah, we'll make sure you get all the details on that. Usually before we dive into the questions from companies or from startup founders, I like to just have a little conversation about your background. And UC Berkeley grad,
Yep.
and stayed in the Bay Area, and been working on startups for a long time.
Yep.
I'm curious, like, where you got your start in the world of entrepreneurship. Like, is that a family trade? Is it, you just picked it up at school? Like, how'd you get started doing startups?
So on both sides of my family, so mother's side and father's side, they are entrepreneurs, but not my parents. So they're both physicians.
Really?
And when I was 5 years old, my dad told me I should be an entrepreneur. And his thesis was, as a doctor, he doesn't use his brain. Most of his job is muscle memory. And he's an anesthesiologist, so he's trying to wake people up after he puts them to sleep. And the other thing is the ceiling. Like, he has a cap on how much money he can make, but he also has a cap on like how much impact he can have as a result. Right?
And so he started saying
5 years old.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And what did that mean? Like, you wanted to start a pizza restaurant?
I think it created this sort of effect of me not really feeling very excited about working for somebody else. And I've only had one internship, which is a job, so one job in my life, and it was in high school. And it was friends of his that started a company in the garage. It was a medical devices company called Massimo. They're public now. He just told me for my whole life, be an entrepreneur.
That's awesome.
You have more opportunity to use your brain and more opportunity as a result.
And will you follow the same advice when as your kids grow up and you start to talk to them about the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the future you're probably going to see people have more than one job anyways, and one of them is going to be more entrepreneurial, like doing something for themselves, freelancing or something. So I think I have a easier time with my kids than my dad did with me, because the world's just heading there.
Yeah, and like with my kids, they're always really interested in, like, did you invest in that company?
Cool.
We watch Shark Tank together.
Yeah.
And it's a little weird, but a lot of the lessons about valuation and like working with the right investor for your company and all that sort of stuff.
They personify investors very well.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some great investors on there soon too. So.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some cool stuff coming. So you've done a bunch of companies. We mentioned Kissmetrics and Crazy Egg, and now QuickSprout, and you also do investing and advising. And I always run into you in either coffee shops or restaurants.
That's
usually around Palo Alto.
Pretty much.
So where do you spend most of your time these days? Like, are you mostly focused on the new company, or 50-50 with some of the investing and advising stuff, or what are you doing?
So my co-founder and I have been super lucky. He's actually my brother-in-law. I'm married to his sister,
wow.
And we met because of her. And we started every company together, and we plan on doing that. Basically, where I'm spending my time is mostly on the new company. But we also have our old company that's 10 years old and is self-funded, which is Crazy Egg. And so we are spending time on that as well, but that's always been a hobby. So whatever you would spend time on your hobby, that's our hobby. Otherwise, it's all full steam ahead on kind of the new company.
So you guys, like when you get together for birthdays and holidays or whatever, like, are you talking business all the time, or?
That's a good question. No, we're not. We usually just call each other up randomly and stuff like that. We're not in the same location. He actually lives in Vegas right now. He used to live in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And we just have this relationship that's very virtual, very distributed. Our companies are also distributed. Not anything I would wish upon anybody, but it works for us. And yeah, it's very interesting that we keep it very separated.
That's cool.
Naturally.
Yeah, no, that's great. I grew up in a family restaurant business, and sometimes it gets a little too close, you know.
Absolutely.
You're just with each other 24/7.
Yeah, and that's not the case for us, right?
Yeah.
No office,
That's
not
good.
a problem.
In fact, it's probably fun when you get to see each other live in person, because you're in different cities, so that's cool. All right, well, one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is, the funding ecosystem has really changed in the last 10 years, and continues to evolve, and be hard to even predict what it's going to look like 10 years from now. But maybe talk about what you've seen since going back to the first company and all the way through. What's been changing, and then I have a follow-up about advice you'd give to founders. So,
absolutely. Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing that I've seen is, even before I sort of started in entrepreneurship, especially with like raising money and venture capitalists, there used to be this thing that is now a myth, which actually was a reality, and I'm sure you remember it. Not to date you or anything, but you've been around here longer than I have.
I'm old. Just say it. Just say it.
But like, you used to be able to raise on just a PowerPoint, and I think those days are basically gone, unless you are somebody that has raised money before or something like that, or a famous person or something. Otherwise, like, you need a product, you need traction, you need some customers or some users if it's B2C, and then you go raise money. And that is a lot different. And I think the trends that have led to that are things like AWS from Amazon, ease of getting to customers as well, with some of the stuff I'm thinking about a lot around content marketing and blogging. And so what I like to say about that is, today, it's from a business standpoint, it's easier than ever to get a customer, probably harder than ever to keep them, right? Because there's so many other options, right? And those are the kind of things that are impacting the startup environment, where you're seeing a lot more money early stage, and you're starting to see a lot less money later stage. Less money meaning there's probably still the same amount of money, but they're just being pickier, because there's more traction earlier on.
10 times the number of seed-funded startups.
Right. So if like a mobile app had 1 million daily active users, like, let's say 5 years ago, it would get funded right now. Today, it might not get funded at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And so, when you're talking with founders who are raising money, maybe separated into the first money in seed sort of stuff, or the Series A, stock markets are going up and down all the time. What kind of advice are you giving people nowadays?
Yeah, if you're a B2C company and you're not making any money yet, either find a way to make money or find a way to grow faster than anybody else, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep capital, have capital to survive, right? If you're a B2B company, the good news is you have customers, hopefully, whether it's seed or A, you have something. You can focus on actually making your own money instead of having to raise money, which is really money from customers for the most part. So my suggestions are just like, and this is funny because my first few businesses were self-funded, right? One of them's still around, and we're always having to be capital efficient. So we're investing as we make money. While in a venture-backed business, you get used to this thing of, I can invest ahead of revenue. But if capital gets harder to get, then you're not going to be able to. Capital's not the easy thing to get anymore, right? If that happens. So I think the trends that I see are, later stage, it's gonna be harder and harder over time. But early stage, even if like something crashed, it might be okay, because we're so heavy on the money early stage that we're just going to go back about where we were about 3 to 5 years ago, I think. And it just means there's a little bit less money in the early stage, but there's still going to be a ton. That's my theory, at least right now.
No, I buy it. And I also think there may be less, seed funded companies at that point, because people who run
so it works out, right?
Which I think could be really good, because if you just think there's this pool of people who can work at startups, if there are less companies, it means recruiting maybe gets a touch easier, right?
I think it has to, because there's more people that are willing to take a job over start a company.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, why don't we see if we can answer some questions for people, and I'll just remind everybody again, you can reach us via email, help@founderline.com, and you can also tweet to @founderline. So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So here's one from Mike in San Jose. The question is, what are some of the best techniques you've seen for growing traffic for consumer websites and mobile apps. Please be as specific as possible.
Awesome.
So, perfect question for the man sitting to my right. And don't give away any secrets or anything, but what do you think?
I think mobile app acquisition. I'll start with that one.
Okay.
I think mobile app acquisition is one of the areas it's just hard, and it's because we don't have all these channels to acquire mobile app customers. Facebook's the biggest channel right now in terms of paying people to come to your app. There's very few organic channels. That's why you see a lot of apps have invites and do things around SMS invites and stuff like that. So, and also take your contact address book and do all that stuff. But it's just not the same as the web. It's not as open. There's very few players controlling it. You can't, with Apple, there's a review process. So I believe, and this, I'm getting to my point. So I believe that if you are able to create distribution on the web and then transfer it over to people downloading a mobile app, long run, everyone's going to have to do something like that. Just because acquiring on mobile is difficult unless you've already got some users, but then you're just getting them to invite other people and kind of that system, but not every app works like that. So most of the successful stuff you see that's not like a viral invite sort of thing is something like Yelp, something where they have distribution from a long time ago or distribution on the web and they're transferring it over into a mobile app, and now mobile usage is higher than web on most people, right? So in that vein, I would say that regardless if it was mobile, consumer, B2B, and again, this is something I think about a lot. I've built my businesses like this, but I would start doing content marketing, right? And what we mostly think of with content marketing is blogging, but there's also a lot of other venues. Like I've got an email list, right, myself, that I send an email to every week. Businesses could do that too if they think that people can get valuable content from them, right? So I would say that I would try to build an inbound funnel, and it would have something to do with content in almost any category, because there's just so much information and education you can do in any market today, and the people are online and they love reading these blog posts, looking at these list posts and all that, and
I get your emails.
Yeah,
I read them sometimes.
Yeah, cool, right? I mean, as long as you don't unsubscribe, I'm good. And tell your friends, okay?
He's measured on subscribers, not on opens, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, so on the web, you mentioned a lot of people buying Facebook ads, and that's how they're.
That's for mobile. Yeah, that's for mobile. Mobile, you're seeing a ton of people target on Facebook and acquire on Facebook because the audience is there. They have 1 billion plus actives.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. All right, Mike. Hope that helps you out. Let's see. Let's go to, this one is Anton in Palo Alto. We're a 20-person startup and having some issues between the founders. What are the best ways to resolve those issues? If you have to ask a founder to leave, what advice can you give about that? So these are always tough situations, and you've been through some of this. I'm sure I have as well. What would you say are the right ways to handle a situation like that? Yeah,
it's very much marriage, relationship, all those kind of tactics are the same with a founder. You just happen to be in business together, right? And are trying to work towards hopefully a common goal. But usually when you have a problem, there's a misalignment. So I think if you can take it to the basics and the core problem, whatever that may be in your scenario, and try to get to that instead of focusing on all the things you're talking about, like in a divorce, right? Like the reason you divorce is because there's some fundamental problem in your relationship that's just usually like one simple problem, right? But yet it's like, oh, you always do this or that or the other. So my tactic would be try to get out of that, like get out of the mode of blaming each other or thinking that you guys are really that different, and just figure out what's the actual root problem, right? And usually this is like, I'd say 70-80% of the time, it has something to do with the direction of the company and the founders having a different opinion of it. And so then it's basically whoever wins. But then how do you define that, right? So, my tactics have everything to do with, if you need help, find someone that can be a neutral third party that can just listen and help you guys get through get through the crap and find the root cause. Because there's always a root cause. Usually it's something like really dumb, right? Like, I can imagine me complaining to my co-founder because he's responsible for sales and marketing that, hey, I built the product, I had our team do it, like, what's up, right? And that can cause a problem. But at the root, it's like, I think he's not working. And that's what I mean by getting to the root, right?
Yeah. Have you seen situations where expectations about workload or work-life balance, founders have radically different opinions about that?
Yeah, if the founders I think this is the killer. I'm sure you'll understand this, but like if you're not aligned with how to work, like you two, and you guys are working the same way, whether it's 14-hour weeks or 8-hour or 14-hour days or 8-hour days, you're done. Like that's actually really an easy one, right? If I meet two founders and it's like, okay, so you guys have different styles of working, and on top of that, you have to sort of work together on a lot of things, it doesn't work. Different styles can work if you don't have to work together on a lot of things. In fact, my co-founder and I, we have completely different styles.
Really?
Right? Yeah, and it's not even like work or hours, but there's one common thing. We work very hard, both of us, but the styles are way different. I like to talk to people all day, right? He likes to go think about marketing and sales and talk to customers or prospects all day, right? Stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think the differences have just to do with ways of working, and if you're too different and can't make it complementary, you're toast. Like that's a hard one.
Yeah, that's I've had to deal with that, and it's just different expectations about work-life balance, and maybe even different stages of life, and whether sometimes it involves family and kids, sometimes it doesn't. It just really depends. So anyway, Anton, sorry to hear you guys are having some issues, and I hope that helps. I think Hitan's point about divorce is really important, and in divorce you worry about the kids, and so in this case the kids are your company and the company employees, and you could probably add investors in that as well, and so focus on
anybody that has a stake in the relationship.
Exactly, any stakeholders who might be affected by this, and so focus on what might be right for that, and see if you can work it out, because it's always a pain to extract somebody out, especially somebody who's sort of the lifeblood of the company, but see what happens.
We used to use this joke on the leadership team in one of my companies, where we would, if we were bickering in front of our team, we would say, oh, parents are fighting. So we would instantly stop when we said, oh, the parents are fighting, right? Because that's how your team feels, right? So just have empathy around all these other people, and like trying to like keep it together,
There was something great on Facebook yesterday, which was like this little girl talking to her mom about a divorce.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch it, but I saw it.
Oh, you should watch it.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, I will.
Like it's almost as if she's reading a script that some 30-year-old wrote. It was like so mature,
like really serious.
Yeah, it's like, mommy, no more fighting. Like I want to be friends with Dad. You should be friends with me. We should all be friends. Like, let's just be friends,
That's awesome.
And I think she's like 5, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, it was just amazing, and it went on for like 3 minutes.
And it probably focuses on relationship, right? Which is a fundamental problem.
Yeah, no, and you could tell the mom was crying as she was, recording this on her phone or whatever it was. But anyway, go watch that video. I forget, I don't know what it was called, but I'm sure it's in your social media streams right now. All right, let's move on. Here's one from Paul in San Francisco. Who are your 3 favorite seed investors and why? Great question. Lots of people out there on the angel front, on the seed fund front, and if you have more than 3, or if you don't want to offend anybody, but what do you think?
Yeah, there's a guy that most people might not talk about, but I used to bump into him every time I was in San Francisco, and when I bumped into him, I'd be like, what are you doing? And he wouldn't say like, I'm going to go meet with an entrepreneur. He would actually say, oh, I'm going to go meet with the marketing person at this company I invested in to go help him with X, Y, and Z. His name's Mark Goins. I think you probably know him.
I do.
And he used to be executive at Intuit. So when someone asks me who's your favorite, to me, it's not about who's my favorite. It's who do I visibly, repeatedly see help entrepreneurs in ways that others aren't. And Mark is the only guy that comes to mind. I'm not even going to give you 3. I'm going to say that he is probably the most helpful investor I've ever seen, regardless of the situation.
Wow.
Right?
And this is not planned at all. So Mark is a really good friend of mine.
Okay, great.
And he's invested in 2 of my companies.
Awesome.
And so I can totally support that. He's just great, and he's what I love about Mark is he's just incredibly candid. Yeah. And if something weird is going on, he calls it out, right?
Yeah.
And like he can tell, like, if startups are roller coasters, and so pretty much every other day is a down day, and every other day is an up day, right?
Absolutely.
And so he knows if you're having a down day, and you just don't want to hear it, right? Like, and he'll wait until tomorrow. And then,
he's good at that, right? He's very empathetic about that, and like it's impressive.
So I totally agree with that, and I think you want investors who are going to be wind in your sails, and like not slow you down, and not give you homework to do, and
so let's get Mark on the show.
he's been on the show.
I didn't know that.
And
Good,
he, and
great,
he,
awesome.
And he was
so
awesome.
then they should go watch Mark's episode.
Yeah, go
Or
watch
Mark's,
that episode.
session, yeah.
It's on our website somewhere, and he flies under the radar a lot.
He does.
Most people don't. He doesn't have.
And
a
he's probably
brand.
gonna be embarrassed that we're talking about him right now.
No,
So.
well, I'll send him a message later. I'll tell him that we had a Goins Love Fest.
Totally unsolicited, yeah. But he's great.
All right.
He personifies the ideal angel investor to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna leave it at one.
Yeah.
I will just say there are lots of great seed investors
Yeah.
out there, and without naming names, one of the most important things you need to do is check references on your investors. So call, email someone like Hitan or me or somebody who's worked with them and say, hey, founder to founder, can we have a 5-minute conversation off the record and talk about what it's like to work with Mr. X? And most of the time you'll get candid feedback from people. I always view it as sort of the cone of silence, between two founders, and you might not go on the air and publicly bash somebody, but if another founder asks you and they're about to take a bunch of money from somebody,
you will tell them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know a founder that won't tell you.
Yeah, you feel kind of guilty.
That's right. It's like I could have told you that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy. Yeah.
But most founders never check references on their investors.
They don't. Yes,
so I don't mean to get up on a soapbox, but please go do that and check people out.
I mean, they're humans too. That's what we forget.
Most of them are.
Sure. Okay.
All right, let's keep going. We're gonna go to Thomas in Santa Monica. So you're an LA guy, right?
I am. I
Originally,
grew up in Southern California.
And I don't know if you still go down there a lot, but
my family's down there.
so maybe this is one of your relatives. Who knows?
Sure.
What's the most difficult situation you've experienced as a founder, and how did you handle it?
Sure. This one's easy for me, and the how I handle it, I'm not sure if anyone will learn anything from that. But I think it was 2011, on my 30th birthday, we found out that we had a class action lawsuit against Kissmetrics and 25 of our customers. And it sucked. And it was my 30th birthday, so birthdays are kind of ruined for life. But I just like to say that. That's not true. And so I think that one was probably the most challenging because it took me about a week. And that's a very long time for me to come to terms with. A week for what? Just to come to terms with it.
Really? But this is happening?
Yeah, but that had a lot to do with okay, we have a lawsuit. Great. Now we got to find a lawyer that can look at what we're being sued about. And in our case, it was a class action around some stuff that was going on in people's web browsers that we were powering, and that essentially hits on privacy. And so we had to find the best privacy lawyer we could. So the first challenge, which took a couple days, was who knows the best firm for this? Because one rule I have when legal stuff happens, just find the best. Don't care. Don't really even care if I can't afford it. I'll just figure it out, right? Because that's when you know you'll have the best representation, and it's legal and court stuff and all that, right? And you don't want to deal with that, right? So we did that, and then it took a week because it was unexpected, and I had to go talk to every single one of those customers and explain to them what's going on.
Wow.
And that's not easy.
Yeah.
And
in person or calls or what?
Whatever I could do.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them were all over the U.S.
Yeah.
Not even this country.
Yeah.
And so it was painful. And I think the advice I can give there is the company's still around. We made it through that, and we could have easily just shut down. I mean, we raised money and everything, so it's not like our own money or anything like that. But we decided to get through it. And one of the things that we like to say, my co-founder and I, is well, that was actually easier than running a company because you only had one way out. We viewed it as we're backed in a corner. There's only one way out, which is get out of it, get through it. Anywhere we turn, there's a wall. So where are you going to go, right? So I think it sucks, but it's an attitude thing. So you got to have the attitude of this happened, and it's just like any other problem or challenge I need to tackle in the business, and treat it like that and try to take all the emotion out of it. And the other thing is we asked a lot of people about what we should do. Investors that didn't invest in our company, friends, Mark Goins, and a lot of them were just able to present a bunch of options, but at least we got a totality of options. In fact, Mark gave me one that no one else did. We didn't do it, but it was just awesome to hear what's possible. And I think one key thing I'll remind everybody, I would say, is especially in startup land. I don't care if it's just Bay Area or anywhere. Now it's global, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has dealt with what you're dealing with. I pretty much don't care what it is. They've dealt with it, right? And so go talk to enough people and get their advice when things like that happen. If you're sitting there not knowing what to do or feeling anxious, right? For me, it was anxiety. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen. So then I just started talking to people, and that helped me, one, realize it happens to people. Two, realize that there's a lot of options of what can happen and what to do.
Yeah. I just this past week I ran into Chris Hulls at
Yeah.
Life 360,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he went through a
Yes, he
similar
did.
sort of
Yes.
situation,
Yeah.
and you know, getting sued by
Yeah.
somebody. I forget what the exact situation was, but it was like crazy patent troll sort of
Yep.
stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it was a patent. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, I think Goins was an investor in that company
Yeah,
also.
yeah. He was.
So I don't know who
Yeah.
was first, you or those guys.
We
but,
were first. For
okay,
sure.
so
yeah, his was after that.
So
I
you're
think,
right. I mean, every situation somebody's been through it before.
That's right.
And you know, sometimes the hardest thing is talking to your employees about it, right? Because
Absolutely.
you kind of feel
Yeah.
like you're letting them down,
Yeah.
and you got to go to them and
Yeah.
say, all right, we're getting sued, and these guys are trying to wipe us
Yeah.
off the face of the planet, but like we are going to get through this, right?
Yeah.
And so you just gotta address it head on and
Yeah,
see what you can do.
yeah. I mean, there it's like I love what you said about addressing it head on. I think the mistake founders make with their team is they don't actually allow the team to understand what's going on in enough detail that they're like, okay, I get it. But like the funny thing is, they're gonna have questions about it, and they might not ask you. So it's better if you just share.
Absolutely.
And that's what we did. And we gave updates every week on what was going on and everything, because they need to stay motivated at what they're doing, not worry about this thing. So you got to have an outlet for them.
Yeah, the last thing you want is people like out looking for jobs because they think we're shutting down in 2 weeks or whatever.
Any of
it
that
is.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Thomas, thanks for the question. I think we got time for one more before we do our commercial interruption here. So let's go to Emily, also in LA.
Okay.
What are the most common mistakes you see startup CEOs making? So, you've probably made some yourself. You see lots of people that you work with making mistakes. What sorts of things do you see?
Yeah. I'm going to focus on first-time CEOs.
Okay.
Just because that's easy, right? Pick on them, because they haven't done the job before.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so I'll give a few of these. So one, I think your communication, the way you talk publicly with your team and all that, like you actually got to think about that a lot more when you're a CEO and running a company. And I think the best example I have is Mark Zuckerberg. If you watch a lot of his old stuff and you watch a lot of his new stuff, there's a transition that happened in how he speaks. And I don't even think it's how he speaks publicly. I think it's how he speaks, period.
What changed?
It just feels like if you look at the early videos and stuff like that, he was always like Mark, but like the clarity of the way he communicated was different. It just wasn't as clear, right? And it wasn't as straightforward. And now like you're not seeing him being nervous. You're seeing him have clarity. And well, then some could say that's just press ready or whatever, all that stuff. But I think there's more to it, right? You just get this habit of like sort of speaking right. And I think the one most valuable thing I would say if you're a first-time CEO and kind of having some of these challenges around stuff is go get a CEO coach. Especially if you're funded, like your company's going to pay for it. Like it's your job to get better as a CEO.
Yeah.
And a coach is not a bad thing, right? It's somebody who's neutral that you can talk to. That's not someone on your team, not your investors. That's not going to judge you. And it's going to actually help you, give you tactics on how to deal with whatever you're dealing with. And I found many people who, once they get one, they feel better. Because they're able to they have that outlet. So even if it's not them, find an outlet to talk about the things that you feel like you can't talk to anyone else about.
Oh, that's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. So sit back and relax for a minute.
Sounds
and
good.
Catch your breath. So we couldn't do this show without the amazing support that we get from our sponsors. And for this season of FounderLine, our 4 sponsors are Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream. So let's start with Oric, the team over there. I've been working with Mitch Zuckley and a bunch of the people on his team for many years across a bunch of companies. And I always tell people, you want to get a great lawyer who's going to do all of your legal paperwork and your stock options and your financings and everything, do that well. But more importantly, you want someone who's a great advisor who has lived through every situation you're going to live through, whether it be some of the things we talked about during the show, having to get rid of a co-founder or a lawsuit or whatever it might be, and just have good, solid business advice for you. So those are the things that I always rely on my lawyers for. It's that pattern recognition. It's having seen way more of any situation you're in than you will ever see unless you become a lawyer yourself. So make sure you get a good one. I can tell you the team over there is great, and there are lots of great lawyers out there, but these are the ones that I continue to go back to time after time. And you can go find more information on their website. It is oric.com. Next, I want to thank our sponsor, Square One Bank. And again, I've been working with the team there for many years. Sam Bomick and Lori Lumenti-Gardi are the two people that I know best over there. And it's really important to have a great financial partner when you're doing a company. And again, it means of course your money, you want to have it someplace where it's going to be safe. That's sort of par for the course. But beyond that, you want a bank that's going to make your life easy. So two really simple things. Like one is making sure that you can do online banking very efficiently with a platform that works really well. The second thing that a lot of first-time founders get caught up in is putting a lot of debt onto their personal credit cards, and then something happens, and they end up owing the company or end up owing the credit card company $30,000, $40,000. And the company's gone, and what do we do now? So they can help set you up with a company credit card, make sure that that's getting paid on a regular basis, and it's not your personal liability, it's the company's liability, which is really important. So those are just two of the things that a good bank can do for you. The team over there is great, very responsive, on top of things, and you can find out more at their website. It is square1bank.com. That's square, the number one, bank.com. I also want to thank Accretive Solutions, and they're the leading business outsourcing firm in Silicon Valley. And the person I work with there is Martini Niganal, and Martini's great. She was my interim CFO at my last company. She's handling the finances for FounderLine now, so I know the people over there do a really good job. And this is, business outsourcing, it's all of your finance functions. So it's your accounts receivable, accounts payable, putting together board packages if you need to do that on a regular basis, just making sure all your finances are up to date. And it's really important to have clean books. You never know when some company is going to come and want to buy you. And one of the mad scrambles that usually happens is, oh my God, we got to clean up the books and get everything ready. And with this, you can do it very cost effectively and just have all your stuff together. And it means, of course, you as the CEO could be doing the payroll with ADP if you wanted to. There's no reason you couldn't do that. But wouldn't you rather take that 1 hour a week or whatever it is and spend it somewhere else on recruiting or acquiring customers or maybe just thinking about your business and your strategy and those sorts of things. So that's why you go get somebody and you outsource it. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and until you get large enough to require a full-time team, great way to do it. So go check out Accretive Solutions. Their website is as-bos.com. And then finally, I want to thank the team over at Ustream. So since the beginning of FounderLine, Brad Hunstable and the team over there have been very supportive of us. When we told them what we wanted to do, they said, we'd love to help you guys out and make sure that you get the best streaming platform possible. We've had nothing but great support from them. If you're thinking about doing something like a company event, or maybe you want to do your own show and broadcast it across the internet to people around the globe, Ustream is a great place to go. You can find out more at their website. It is ustream.tv. Whew, out of breath. So why don't we get back into questions? And once again, if you have a question for us, you can send it to help@founderline.com, or you can tweet to our Twitter handle. It is @FounderLine. So let's see. We got one from Danny in Sausalito. What makes a great founder? Why do you think so many great founders came out of PayPal? So you give me your thoughts, and I might chime in with something.
I'm sure you've got something. You probably watched that closer than I did. I think founders need to be self-aware. And in general, not even general, I think companies need to be self-aware. If the founder of a company is not self-aware, the company won't be self-aware. What I mean by that specifically is, like, I love to see a company that identifies that they are really bad at something and then you look at them 3, 4, 6 months later, and they're really good at that thing that they sucked at. And that's what I mean by self-awareness. Because as a human, being self-aware means you're recognizing where your faults are and your strengths are, and you're actually, actively trying to work on that. So that's the simple one thing. I'll take PayPal real quick, and I'm sure you've got a lot more on that.
No.
I think something really interesting and special happens when you have a group of people literally all in one place, in this case especially, working on a really hard problem. And you end up with a very specific shared experience, right? And I think at PayPal that happened, right? They were attacking a bunch of big things, like money is a big thing.
Yeah.
eBay was a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
And attacking those things caused all these team members to have a shared experience because they were successful at it, and it wasn't easy. And so I think that shared experience causes people to have a certain way of doing things, obviously at work there. And so then eventually they get entrepreneurial and kind of go out and do other things, because a lot of these team members either were hungry for making more or adding more value, or however way they look at making more money, whatever. And some of them had just enough money to not have to work again, but they still wanted to do something.
Yeah.
So I think I would just say that that's the construct that happened over there, and I'm not sure if we'll see that again.
Well, and PayPal is remarkable for if you think about the things that have come out of there, like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Keith Rabois, Dave McClure, like the list
Something was
goes,
in the air.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, and I think back on some previous experiences, and it gets back to what you said, like you want to try and repeat that magical thing again, right? Like how do we get that magic back? And it might be with a different set of people and usually a different problem.
Yeah.
But Max Levchin, I forgot. I mean, the list goes on and on, right?
Yeah.
So I always think to myself about the different attributes of the companies that I worked for and what I liked the best, and in each one, and there were special things about every company.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was in the food or the water back then that caused all this great stuff to come out of there, but it's a pretty amazing legacy. I don't know that.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe we'll see some like a Google have similar footprint at some point. There are tons of people coming out of Google.
I think what's interesting is you don't think about it because it wasn't acquired. So PayPal was acquired at a timely time when there weren't that many startups, right? So and they happened to, I think, actually probably has something to do with the way they recruited. And they recruited these great people, which went on and did these great things.
And was obviously much smaller than Google at the time.
That's right.
Right. So I don't know. As to the what makes a great founder, I mean, I totally agree with what you said. Because startups are constantly reinventing themselves across all fronts, right?
Yeah.
And if they're not, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward,
That's
right?
right.
So
that's right.
The other one I'd add, which has come up a little bit today, is sort of that relentless tenacity. Like when problems come up, you are going to find a way through them, and that is the thing I look for in people I'm going to invest in the most. Is like, has this person faced adversity in some form or another? Or has life just been handed to them on a silver platter?
It's the idea of predictability of what they'll do when shit's really bad. Yeah. Right?
Because it's going to be really bad.
Yeah. It's just the way it is.
And so the people who, find ways to get through that stuff and even if it's not a win, they come out of it neutral, at least they got through it, right?
That's
and
right.
They've been tested, and maybe that ties in with the PayPal thing, right?
Yeah.
Like they were tested, they had to figure this thing out, and beaming cash on Palm Pilots or whatever it was didn't quite work, right?
No.
So we're gonna get someday that'll we'll just be
we'll get there.
I mean, you could argue you could do it today with
square cash, stuff like that.
Yeah. So all right, well, great question, Danny. Let's keep going. Here's one from Andy in Manhattan. So hello to New York.
Hey, New York.
Why do we continue to see high-flying companies like Quirky or Zertrul run out of cash? This seems like a pretty fundamental thing for a startup to focus on, and a perfect ad for Accretive Solutions, and having somebody who's watching your books.
money. Yeah.
But I mean, these are some big companies. I don't know if you were involved with either one of those, but I wasn't, and I don't know the people there. But
I don't either.
I
can talk to it.
They're not the first, and they're not the last, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I know enough about both of those to know that they both failed, for lack of a better word, or ran out of money for very different reasons. So I think one thing to keep in mind is, in the question, you're focusing on that they ran out of money. But there's so many reasons you could run out of money.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have a business, you couldn't raise money, right? So we don't really know what happened unless you go talk to those people, and then you might just still get a story, right?
Right.
So fundamentally, yes, they run out of money. Yes, that's a fundamental thing when you take money as a founder to make sure you don't run out of money. But some big deal didn't happen. What do you do, right? Or some competitor came out or some big company came out and copied you, and they won. They're winning, right? They're getting your customers, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many things that can happen. It's already so hard to start a company that I think it's very difficult to vilify or find a consistent pattern of why they run out of money. But there's all these reasons, and I think there's preventable ones and unpreventable ones, right? Like a lawsuit is pretty much unpreventable unless you know why it happened and what you did. But if it just came out of nowhere and you didn't do anything specific to get it, that can kill a company, right? And you can run out of cash. So I don't know. I would say that I don't try to make judgment on a company that ran out of cash, but I try to learn a business lesson from it. So I think Quirky had something to do with their business model and finding probably the right business too late, right? They were so focused on people making stuff, right? Like they had this whole crowdsource voting for little gadgets and goods that people could make, and they were good, had a decent business doing that, I think. But then they expanded into having stuff at Radio Shack and all that, and so it's maybe the world didn't need that now that we had 3D printers, right? Or the behavior of people voting on these ideas and gadgets just didn't matter anymore, right? We don't know.
And they changed something with the contractors becoming employees or vice versa.
Yeah, and that kills a lot of companies too, right? The whole idea of these 1099 people having to become employees all of a sudden, right? Because of some rules. So like I said, we can talk about each failure and come up with no pattern if we even go through 10 or 20 of them, except they ran out of money.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing I would add is, it's your job as the CEO to know how much money you have. So, if you don't know it on a pretty regular basis, I don't think it needs to be daily, but
sure.
you have a sense hey, we got 300K left or, whatever it is, and we're burning.
You just need to know it monthly.
Yeah.
So if you know it for the beginning of the month, and then you know it for the next beginning of the month, you're generally good, right? Yeah, I agree, but that's a preventable one.
Exactly.
Right? If you know how much cash you have, then you can figure out where there's options, right?
Well, and just the second piece of that is, if you are running into trouble, don't wait too long to act, right? Nobody ever said, we laid off too many people, that was a mistake, right? It's usually you don't cut deep enough, you don't slow down fast enough. We got to spend on marketing because otherwise we'll lose all our customers, and so I think it's taking the hit up front and not death by 1,000 cuts. Just do it. Weather the storm, and then hopefully it buys you a little bit of time to go figure out what's wrong or what changed or survive the lawsuit or the whatever the thing is that happened to you, right? So I don't know. Those are a couple of thoughts there, but yeah, that's a tough one. And I actually the Quirky one I think happened this week, and I was pretty shocked by that. They had raised a lot of money and some great products, right? And I wouldn't have been the one that I was expecting to. Yeah,
I mean, in reality, for me, it's it's easy for a startup to run out of money. It's hard for a big company, right? But at the same time, those big companies are doing the same thing startups are, and literally running out of money on those projects, right? So it's the same thing, right? It's not like this is any different than what happens at big companies when a project's not funded anymore. Same reasoning too, right? It just didn't work.
Yep.
So
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Happy in Berkeley. So, okay, they're happy in Berkeley.
I went to Berkeley. I was happy in Berkeley too. Yeah, absolutely.
So this one says, I'm a software engineer for a large public technology company, but I think I would like to work for a startup. What are the best ways to find the right startup?
Well,
Good question.
If you're an engineer, you'll get the interview. so first off, you'll get the interview.
Yeah.
Now, if you only have certain skills like Java and stuff like that, then you probably need a segment towards companies that need that. But Java's actually not that bad right now because of Android in terms of attention and all that stuff. But otherwise, it's I think just like when you get a job at a large enterprise or large company, you have to fit into the culture. You have to accept the culture. You have to want to be in that culture. So literally just start interviewing. There's nothing super special about it, right? And over time, if I were in a big company, I probably got a whole bunch of ideas about how big companies run that are probably validated because you've been in a big company. but more importantly, invalidate ideas of how startups run. So I might go talk to my startup friends or find somebody who you're not trying to get a job with
that's a great one.
to just understand startups better.
Yeah.
Because you could easily blow it. You could be the best person for a startup, but you could blow it because you're using corporate speak. And the startup culture, it's not corporate speak.
You show up with the tie. And,
yeah, and so just figure out whether, and that's really just proper interview behavior, which is like, figure out what the company's about so you can align with that. Because you might want to work there,
Well, so let me flip this around a little bit. So I know, when I'm interviewing people who are coming from big companies and maybe don't have startup experience, I'm always a little cautious about that, right? Because mostly from the cultural perspective, like, are they going to be able to handle not having somebody to do everything for them, right? Or if they need to do recruiting, well, we don't have a recruiting department that you could submit your request to.
You're gonna have to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, if you need to buy something, you gotta like walk to the store yourself or drive there. So do you filter for those same sorts of things, like when you're talking to, because a lot of these people are great engineers or are really good at what they do. But culturally, they haven't, had the same experience.
So the thing is, like, do you want to give them a startup reality check after you hire them or before?
Yeah.
And so in the interview, if you notice like they're saying these things are very corporate-y, then you educate them.
Yeah.
Give them the startup reality check. Be like, actually, in a startup, it's like this, this, and this, right? And you might not know what that looks like because you've never worked in one, but let me tell you. And then let's decide whether we continue this conversation, right? Because that's how it is. It's different, right? But there are also positives to it. You get to learn faster. In every case, I've seen that, right? You get to sort of develop with the company, and you have more, lack of a better word, corporate speak, upward mobility, right? You want to go take on more responsibility at a startup.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to say no to you unless you're really bad at it.
No, that's totally true. And I would also say, look for a company that you're really excited about the space they're in, right? Like,
that helps a lot.
It's not just a job, like it's an adventure. So you've got to have passion for whatever it is, and that's a little different. Sometimes you're working in a big company and you get put on project X over here, and
you don't have a choice.
Yeah, and then they move you off of that one to project Y, and it's very different in a startup. Like you're part of a family and a team, and a little bit different world.
A lot more collaborative.
So hope that helps. Happy. Let's go to Gary in Chicago. This one is, how do you feel about founders continuing as CEO versus bringing in a replacement CEO? Maybe you could give some anecdotal data on how often that works out and why. So funny, we were talking about some of this before the show. What do you think? What's been your?
It's one of those things where it's like there's something that's trendy. So I'm going to start there. So like what was trendy before was replacing CEOs. The reason that was trendy, though, is because the CEOs were very much product people or engineers or something like that, and there were a lot of business people around, and those business people could probably do a better job at business, and the knowledge wasn't there, right, like it is today. So today, so that's one trend, right, which is just the idea that it's a trendy thing today to not replace a CEO. It used to be trendy to replace a CEO back in the day to build an effective business.
Yeah.
And the reason I would say it's not trendy now is there's a slight, if not massive, power shift in terms of investors or entrepreneurs now that there's more entrepreneurs and there's also more money, right? So it's a different meat market, right, so to speak. So I think those are two really important trends to keep in mind when you think about stuff like this, because there might be a new trend. I don't know what it looks like. It feels like we're at where we're going to be for a while. But there's also firms that have built their brand around not replacing founders, like A16Z. So Andreessen Horowitz, they come out and say that. But they're also founders and entrepreneurs, and they've written about this stuff. And if you go read their stuff, it makes sense what they're saying, right? So I would defer you to some of their content around that. But when you have a big firm building a brand on that thesis, it's going to spread if they're successful.
Yeah.
And so part of that is like, now if you're replacing CEOs and you're an investor, what am I going to say when an entrepreneur asks me about you? What am I going to say?
Yeah.
Well, you'd rather have Andreessen's money because you're protected. You get to keep your business, right? And now, the thing is, though, Andreessen just doesn't say that. They say, we will support you to make you the CEO you need to be for this business.
And get you that CEO coach, as you mentioned.
Whatever
earlier,
you need, right? I mean, I've heard of even Ben Horowitz having sessions with leadership teams, in these companies and like helping them think through stuff, right? Yep. So like I think it takes, if you're going to say that as a firm, it takes that backing that up and things like that. And I think that's one of the reasons this is important. Now, in terms of the data and stats, if you went back in the day, the stats probably look good. that it made sense to do it. If you now look today in the stats, it doesn't look good. And there's one simple reason. The markets are more competitive than ever. And generally, a new CEO coming in cannot compete in the same way a founder can because the founder created the business. And a lot of times you're recreating the business more than you used to. It's not just a scale, optimize, efficiency problem. It's a reinvent, innovate problem.
Constantly reinvent.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think...
And founders are better at that,
well,
period.
I mean, that's what they do, right?
That's right.
And my experience when they bring in the, quote, gray-haired CEO, and sometimes the founder sticks around, sometimes the founder does not. But usually what you're losing, especially if they leave, is sort of that that ability to really identify problems and solve problems, and sort of the whole reason why this thing exists in the first place, right?
There's a level of care that you have as a founder that's very hard to even get anybody else to understand.
Yeah, yeah, and
you don't want to lose that.
So I, having been through that myself, on both sides, I know what that's like, and I think it is getting to be less and less frequent, and in some cases it's required, right? Like there's a bad actor. We've seen those over the years,
Absolutely.
and something needs to be done. But more often than not, the founder needs some help with something. And I haven't worked with Andreessen Horowitz, but the people I know who have are very positive about that experience. Getting the support they need. And I think a lot of VCs are building their brands around trying to help people. Mark Suster is another example of somebody who's really trying to help entrepreneurs out. So it just depends on the situation, but. I don't know. I'd be curious to know which companies it's worked out for. You could say Google.
LinkedIn.
They brought in. That's true. LinkedIn.
And Google, you could argue it didn't work out.
Because Eric's no longer there. Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe
you could argue either way on that one because he's not there.
Well, maybe he was the right guy for a while.
For a period of time.
Until
But that's what they kind of did back in the day too, right?
Yeah,
right guy for this phase. Well,
do you think Reed wanted to give up the reins, or?
My understanding was yes, but I'm not. I can't be quoted on that because I haven't read anything around that. But I remember, this is again the self-awareness thing. I believe he was self-aware about this, and that's why I think there was a succession plan and things like that. So the thing is, the right way to do it is have a plan, and then build people up in your company to do it. Outside CEO searches, those tend not to work out, right? Those are the nuances of this question.
Well, and LinkedIn had to go through a couple of people before they got to the right guy, right? So, all right, well. Great question, Gary. Let's keep going here. We've got time for a few more. Here's one from Mark in Mountain View, so nearby.
Yeah.
Let's see. It says, regarding branding a company or product, is following popular trends more valuable than maintaining a consistent brand? Does that change when your companies age? Interesting question. So. I don't know. What do you think about branding? Is it good to sort of follow the trendy stuff, or sort of stick with the same thing that's been working for you?
Well, if it's working for you, why would you change it?
I don't know.
Right.
Great
so that's
question.
my first thing, right?
Yeah,
if it's working, you shouldn't change it unless you feel like it's not working or it's not going to work in the future.
Yeah.
But from a branding standpoint, I'm personally I think that the way to stand out these days is to find a way to build a brand either way. Right? And some brands can be built on trends. So like one example I would give you is e-commerce brands are generally built on trends. Like Honest Company, The Honest Company is built on a trend. The trend is that moms, women, they're more conscious, eco-conscious, conscious of what they're putting on their bodies, in their bodies, all that kind of stuff, and their kids and all that. And so that company makes sense right now, even with the name Honest. Right? We tell you what's in it. And it's nothing crappy, right? That's kind of the brand they built. But you could argue that's a trend. And it's a brand built on a trend.
If only Volkswagen had followed that as well,
right?
We'd be okay.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it bothers me when people are just trying to change constantly, like meme of the day, like
with no good basis.
Oh, we saw those guys do that, so we're gonna do that as well, and so. I don't know if we're answering your question, Mark, but hopefully that helps a little bit. And he asked, does it change with age? I think it might change with age.
Brands always change with age. Perception of the brand changes. How you need to evolve it changes. You might need a new brand, so you build a second thing with a brand, separate brand, different demographic. So yeah, it absolutely changes.
All right. Well, let's get another one in here. This one is from Rick in Austin. what companies would you say are unicorns that nobody has heard of yet, and how do I invest? That is an excellent question. So, and I'm hoping you're going to give us, some good advice so I can call the founders and put some money in. But what do you think?
No one's going to tell you that.
No?
I mean, it's a great question, but like even if I gave you the ones that I thought were unicorns or were gonna be unicorns, it's a gonna be thing.
Yeah.
And the gonna be thing is not a sure thing. And also this whole idea of unicorns, it's like it's just $1 billion valuation for a company, right? Like Uber blew through that valuation super fast. Are they still a unicorn? Were they ever a unicorn?
Yeah.
So I think we have a unicorn word, and it really means, do you have $1 billion valuation for your company? And that's really what kind of that means, which doesn't really mean anything.
Well, so how
right?
about who's going to be a great company? You have any under the radar, companies that you think about?
Yeah. So as an investor, I should be pitching my book, right? That's
You
what I'm
should.
saying.
You should.
Yeah, but I just don't do that.
Or your
right?
own company. Come on.
No,
I was expecting Quick Sprout to be
I honestly,
at the tip of your tongue.
Yeah. No, I just don't think that like I don't think you can predict that. And even some of these businesses, like we talked about Quirky and Zirtual earlier, like if they were a unicorn and then they ran out of money, what would we say? Right? We're just not seeing enough of those, but we're going to see a lot more of those. That's inevitable. Yep. Right? You can't support like 50 companies at $1 billion valuation and not expect bad things to happen. So I would say that I'm more bullish on categories of problems, right? Like right now, there's kind of a resurgence of marketplaces, right? And a lot of them now we're seeing marketplaces that are actually start on mobile because mobile's hot too. Yep. And when you put two trends like that together and understand why they're working, you start seeing really large companies, right? Yeah. So to me, the idea of giving away, the one thing that I think we're going to see more of is give away the software and charge for something else. So I'll leave you with that. So if I find when I find companies that have that pattern right now, I get excited.
All right. Well, I'll go out on a limb. So,
go for it.
I'm going to talk about spaces. So I think the insurance market is due for massive disruption right now.
Because they make a lot of money.
They make a lot of
reason,
money.
right?
They spend a lot of money, right?
Oh, that too, yeah.
But I just think in general, especially on the health insurance side, especially, I think we've reached a point where some interesting things could go on there. Also seeing a lot of activity in the car buying space, especially used cars.
Yes.
And there's been some big financings
around that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Really big. Yeah.
And so I think there's some interesting stuff there. Yep. And mobile in particular. I mean, we're going through this amazing shift where these supercomputers are in our pockets, and even though it's been going on for 10 years now, practically, we're in the third inning, so we still got a long way to go. So,
I agree.
We'll leave it there. Let's do a quick one here from one of our regulars, Mikey in New York, who must be a regular viewer, and we got about 2 minutes. So, with several high-profile startups recently shutting down, and given the uncertainty in the macro environment, what advice would you give to founders to weather a potential downturn? So what's your quick take on that?
It's basically what VCs tell you, which is watch your cash and make sure you have it for as long as you can.
Don't run out of money.
And if you don't, raise money. So that's why you're seeing between now and the end of the year, you'll see massive raises. Massive raises.
Yeah.
Like ones that you'll be like, why all of a sudden did in 1 week 6 companies announce like 500 million or more valuations, right, on their last round? Why? Because they're trying to solve this problem of making sure they have capital for as long as they need to weather a downturn. So it's don't run out of money. It's pretty much it. Make sure you have cash during that period. And if you don't, shut down, sell, or get profitable.
As quickly as you can. And it's a great time right now because sort of the September through Thanksgiving timeframe, we're out of VC vacation season.
Things can still happen.
And
I look at about first week of November and it starts.
Well,
and then first week of January it's back up. Yeah.
And then you see like in December, January, like all the announcements of the deals that close. End of October, right? So. Anyway, well, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing such a great job
Happy
today.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
That was awesome. Yeah. And if you want to check out Hiten, he's on Twitter. His handle is Hiten Shah, Shah. So go check him out and follow him and tweet at him, and whatever else you can do.
All good.
So tune in next week for another episode of FounderLine. Our guest will be Mitch Zuckley, who is the global chairman and CEO of Oric. So I mentioned Mitch earlier, and he's going to be on the show taking your questions for the whole hour. He's done hundreds of financings and a bunch of IPOs and acquisitions with some great companies like Nest Labs and eHarmony, Martha Stewart Living, Benchmark Capital, and Sequoia Capital. So that's next Wednesday, September 30th at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Thank you once again to our fantastic sponsors, Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @FounderLine. You can email us questions in advance for Mitch to help@founderline.com. You can go to our website, which you can figure out, and you can watch previous episodes. You can read about the upcoming guests, and you can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Thanks for watching. Here's to the crazy ones, and we'll see you again next time.
See ya.